Good evening, I'm Cynthia Ng. This is AWANI Tonight. Malaysia not in crisis, Finance Minister says there are no plans to peg the ringgit to the dollar. And on World Alzheimer's Day, we dismantle the stigma around dementia. That and more coming up. Having an election during the monsoon period is not suitable due to logistical and health issues, says Khairi Jamaluddin. The health minister said governments, by convention, usually would choose to avoid calling for elections when the country is expected to face flooding issues.
He explained that a lot of human resources are required to be mobilized during the monsoon season, such as to evacuate flood victims, as well as to manage evacuation centres. While schools used as polling centres might also be used as evacuation centres during flooding season. Khairi was responding to media questions on the Health Ministry's view on calls to hold the 15th general election before the end of this year, which may coincide with the monsoon season. From the public health aspect, the minister stressed that floods would usually see the spread of infectious and waterborne diseases, which would require intervention by the Health Ministry.
Khairi Jamaluddin has denied allegations circulating on social media that Datuk Sri Najib Razak, who is currently serving time in prison for corruption, is being given special treatment. He explained that there was a request by the Deputy Public Prosecutor for proceedings to be adjourned so that Najib can receive the required medical attention, following which Najib was treated at Kuala Lumpur Hospital before being referred to the Cheras Rehabilitation Hospital.
He was referred to Hospital Rehabilitasi Cheras because of the follow-up treatment that requires physiotherapy. And part of that is, of course, to teach him and to train him on how to do the physiotherapy himself, because he will be discharged once the specialists are satisfied that he no longer requires to be admitted. So this is a standard procedure where we have in the past treated prisoners in government hospitals, and they will be sent back to the prison once once the specialists and the doctors are satisfied that they can be discharged. Correct, Atensri? So in the case of that Najib, no special treatment.
Finance Minister Tengku Datuk Sri Zafrul Abdul Aziz reiterates that there will be no peg of the ringgit to the US dollar amid the continued weakening of the local currency. He also assured that Malaysia is not in a currency or financial crisis like back in 1997, which is being claimed by certain parties.
He explained that pegging the ringgit to the dollar has high risks and trade-offs, as Malaysia would have to follow the monetary policy in the US.
And you know, the monetary policy di Amerika Syarikat bagaimana, dan hari ini pun insyaAllah we will know where interest rate is going. Jadi jika ringgit ditambat, Malaysia akan menghadapi kekangan untuk menetapkan dasar monetary dan rakyat terpaksa menanggung kos pembiayaan yang tinggi, walaupun keadaan ekonomi negara kita tidak sama seperti di Amerika Syarikat.
He also pointed out that even though the ringgit has fallen, other currencies like the Japanese yen and the British pound have weakened against the dollar. The yen, for example, has fallen to its lowest level in about 24 years. Meanwhile, the sterling is at its lowest level in about 37 years.
Khazanah Nasional Berhad is setting its sight on exploring new potential investments in Southeast Asia and India. Its Managing Director, Dato' Amirul Faizal Wanzar, has said Khazanah is looking for the right time to invest and is seeking opportunities, but ruled out Europe and China for the time being.
Timing-wise, the US, for example, is still an attractive market. You can't ignore that. China, unfortunately, we're not quite clear when they're going to really open up. Okay, and there's a lot of pressure there as well. So again, what we do is we look at the strategic asset allocation. We're still overweight China. We want to go to developed markets. Europe is still quite difficult, so the US is still there as a question of timing. Southeast Asia, we'll look at as well, and India, of course, we're invested there as well.
Last month, Bernama reported that Khazanah was in talks with Indian auto services firm Go Mechanic to lead a $100 million investment round. Speaking at the MIDF Conversations webinar with Group Managing Director Dato Sharon Mokzani, Amirul also commented on how a weak ringgit against the US dollar will impact Khazanah's performance.
And this is the thing, I think what does impact the performance tends to be how valuations are across the world and how US dollar rates impact currencies across the world. It's not just US dollar, because it's other investments as well. And yes, I think inevitably any fund manager out there, when we see the rate hikes that are happening and how the ramifications it has on various economies, various countries, of course it would be impacted, right? and like I said, it's not an easy year to invest in this year for all fund managers, including us.
The Cabinet has agreed to recruit 10,000 workers from Sri Lanka, which is facing its worst economic crisis. Human Resources Minister Datuk Sri M. Saravanan said the Sri Lankan government submitted an application to supply manpower to Malaysia.
Saravanan said the decision to accept workers was one of Putrajaya's efforts to assist Sri Lanka in overcoming its economic crisis. He urged the Malaysian industries and employers to support the government's good intention by employing workers from Sri Lanka to fill job vacancies in sectors that are allowed to hire foreign workers. Those who have been given quota approval and settled their levies should make use of this opportunity, he said.
We will go for a quick break. Stay tuned for more.
Sehat ialah satu cara hidup. Cara untuk minum dengan baik, makan dengan baik, dengan bahan-bahan segar dan pelbagai cara yang sihat untuk memasaknya. Bakar, kukus, masak, campur, jus. Khas untuk semua amatur dan pakar. Gaya hidup sihat yang memasak di hujung minggu, menyihatkan badan dan jiwa. Hidup sihat setiap hari bersama Panasonic.
Panasonic.
Ingin bersorak di perlawanan bola sepak terhebat? Kini anda boleh dengan 100 Plus. Jom bola dengan 100 Plus. Serta Ila sekarang.
Welcome back. Globally, over 55 million people live with dementia, but up to 85% of people living with dementia may not receive post-diagnosis care. This was revealed in the latest report by Alzheimer's Disease International. We speak to its CEO, Paula Barbarino, on why there is a lack of urgency to address this condition.
In general, I think one of the biggest challenges we have is stigma. So a lot of people still don't believe that Alzheimer or dementia are diseases. They still believe it's caused by normal aging. But if you see the brain of a person with Alzheimer and you take the brain of a healthy person, they are completely at the same age, they're completely different. So it's just an organ that shrivels, just as other organs in your body could shrivel. So it is a disease. And if government don't accept that, if clinical practitioners don't accept that, in our survey in 2019, we discovered that 62% of healthcare practitioners still believed dementia was part of normal aging. So this is still the challenge. So people need to stop being in denial that this is going to go miraculously away. It's not.
With the number of dementia cases expected to continue on an upward trend, Paula stresses the importance for a national plan to be put into action.
Malaysia has been working on its national dementia plan now for quite some time. Unfortunately, COVID blocked the development, and the plan, as far as I know, has been sitting in an in-tray at the ministry for a long time. However, we have very positive news. We've just been granted a meeting with the Minister of Health in October. So we are very hopeful that this is a positive signal that the ministry may be interested in picking up the plan and doing something about it. I also know that the minister himself had recently announced that sadly his father-in-law, the former prime minister, has developed dementia. And that is really an important thing to do, because it will make more Malaysians that are going through this difficult time aware that this is something not to be ashamed of. This is something that can happen in any family. So the plan in dementia is a good plan, the draft plan. It just needs implementation by the minister and even better localization to the needs of Malaysia. And the important thing is that plans are expensive, it's true, but you don't have to start with a big plan. You can start from somewhere and then expand your plan to cover other areas.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has announced a partial military mobilization starting today, the first since World War II. Putin's decree will see 300,000 reserves called up to serve in Russia's military campaign in Ukraine. The decree came a day after Russian-controlled regions in eastern and southern Ukraine announced plans to hold votes on becoming integral parts of Russia. In a televised address, Putin said this was a necessary step to ensure Russian territorial integrity. He also warned that if the West continues what he called a nuclear blackmail, Moscow would respond with the might of all its military capabilities.
Граждане России могут быть уверены, территориальная целостность нашей Родины, наша независимость и свобода будут обеспечены. Подчеркну это еще раз. Всеми имеющимися у нас средствами. А те, кто пытаются шантажировать нас ядерным оружием, должны знать, что роза ветров может развернуться и в их сторону.
Western nations have condemned Moscow's plans to hold referendums in parts of Ukraine that are currently under Russian control. The referendums will start on Friday in the Luhansk and Kherson regions, as well as the partly Russian-controlled Zaporizhia and Donetsk regions. A Thai policeman was killed and 4 others injured after running into a roadside bomb in southern Thailand. Authorities said the victims, all officers, were conducting their routine night patrol before their vehicles were struck by a roadside bomb. According to police, a motorcycle and a patrol truck were traveling together when both were hit in front of a hospital in Pattani province at about 8 p.m. last night. An improvised explosive device planted at the roadside was detonated remotely as the vehicles passed by. The explosion killed the officer on the motorcycle and caused the truck to veer off the road before crashing into an electrical pole. TV footage showed damage to the hospital exterior and a nearby school opposite the hospital. Rebel groups, mostly active in Thailand's southern provinces of Pattani, Narathiwat and Yala, often attack government targets and have been fighting for self-rule in the deep south for decades. A man set himself on fire near the Japanese Prime Minister's office in what appeared to be a protest against the government's decision to hold a state funeral for the late former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. The man in his 70s told police that he had deliberately doused himself in oil. He was taken to hospital after suffering burns on his entire body. A police officer who tried to extinguish the flames was also injured. A letter about Abe's state funeral and the words "I strongly oppose it" was found nearby. The incident took place on what would have been Abe's 68th birthday. Abe, Japan's longest-serving prime minister, was shot dead on July 8th while campaigning. A publicly funded state funeral, estimated to cost $12 million, honoring him, is expected on September 27th in Tokyo. The Health Ministry says it will announce a decision on legalizing medical cannabis before year-end. What should policymakers focus on in making this decision? On Consider This, we ask our guest on what lessons we can learn from Thailand's experience. That's all we have for you on AWANI tonight. My name is Cynthia Ng. Thank you for watching.
and good evening. I'm Melissa Idris. You're watching Consider This. This is the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. The Health Ministry is currently looking into whether or not Malaysia should legalize